As an educator, it is not always easy to perform countless tasks every day. So we create Classcipe, a one-stop solution for all your teaching, learning, and managing needs of resources. Our mission is to make global educational resources shared easily and efficiently. To achieve this mission, Classcipe equips educators in the following aspects. Classcipe helps make lesson plans, including unit plans and all types of learning experiences, assessment tools with tailored templates and formats. Classcipe allows educators to collaborate and find teaching resources with keyword searching and label matching, high-quality content providers to gain income by creating materials valuable to others. Classcipe enables educators to work alone or collaborate, design their lessons with relevant samples of teaching templates and interactive questions. Managing students and classes are always easy with Classcipe. Educators can conduct free or paid professional development workshops easily with a smart tracking system built in Classcipe. Classcipe engages participants with interactive questions, checking real-time responses, and providing instant feedbacks. Finally, Classcipe also allows school administrators to manage their school curriculum, grades, teachers, students, and reports with no hassle or headache. If your Classcipe workshop is designed for longer than 40 minutes, you can always schedule multiple workshops with the same PD content. Simply find the content on your list, click workshop, give it a name that you would recognize as the first part of your workshop. Teachers can use Classcipe in their classrooms whether their students have or do not have devices. With devices, students will receive streamlined instructions from the teacher on Classcipe, and students can work on Classcipe tasks collaboratively with each other. Teachers will be able to check their instant responses and insights of their learning. If the classroom is not equipped with devices, teachers can still use Classcipe's multimedia tools and features to create activities, as well as dynamic media elements to engage students. For online learning environment, students will have individualized guidance through Classcipe, complete their homework assignments at any time, and receive feedbacks from their teachers. Classcipe also offers varied functions for students' engagement, including different types of interactive questions, real-time feedbacks, and etc. With the statistical data, teachers can also get quick insights into students' work. Classcipe can also be used for hybrid learning. Teachers can take charge of the learning pace by controlling students' screen, or they can let students to switch between the learning content at their own pace. And any class can be physically projecting to the students sitting in the classroom while live streaming to the student virtually via Zoom meeting and Classcipe projecting window. Teacher can also remote control the projecting screen from a dashboard opened on a handy device, which makes the teaching even easier.
Okay, I see many of us are already here. The session will start in 10 minutes. Okay, so let's grab some water and stretch your legs. Screen, Chrome, share this. So.
Teachers can use Classcipe in their classrooms whether their students have or do not have devices. With devices, students will receive streamlined instructions from the teacher on Classcipe, and students can work on Classcipe tasks collaboratively with each other. Teachers will be able to check their instant responses and insights of their learning. If the classroom is not equipped with devices, teacher can still use Classcipe's multimedia tools and features to create activities, as well as dynamic media elements to engage students. For online learning environment, students will have individualized guidance through Classcipe, complete their homework assignments at any time, and receive feedbacks from their teachers. Classcipe also offers varied functions for students' engagement, including different types of interactive questions, real-time feedbacks, and etc. With the statistical data, teachers can also get quick insights into students' work. Classcipe can also be used for hybrid learning. Teachers can take charge of the learning pace by controlling students' screen, or they can let students to switch between the learning content at their own pace. And any class can be physically projecting to the students sitting in the classroom while live streaming to the student virtually via Zoom meeting and Classcipe projecting window. Teacher can also remote control the projecting screen from a dashboard open on a handy device, which makes the teaching even easier.
The thing that's different about a book about holiday home, you always have the whole place to yourself. No stranger at the dinner table making things awkward, or in another room taking up space. It's just you and your people. Because why would you ever share?
So many YouTube advertisements. Just play this video again.
It is not always easy to perform countless. As an educator, it is not always easy to perform countless tasks every day. So we create Classcipe, a one-stop solution for all your teaching, learning, and managing needs of resources. Our mission is to make global educational resources shared easily and efficiently. To achieve this mission, Classcipe equips educators in the following aspects. Classcipe helps make lesson plans, including unit plans and all types of learning experiences, assessment tools with tailored templates and formats. Classcipe allows educators to collaborate and find teaching resources with keyword searching and label matching, high-quality content providers to gain income by creating materials valuable to others. Classcipe enables educators to work alone or collaborate, to design their lessons with relevant samples of teaching templates and interactive questions. Managing students and classes are always easy with Classcipe. Educators can conduct free or paid professional development workshops easily with a smart tracking system built in Classcipe. Classcipe engages participants with interactive questions, checking real-time responses, and providing instant feedbacks. Finally, Classcipe also allows school administrators to manage their school curriculum, grades, teachers, students, and reports with no hassle or headache. If your Classcipe workshop is designed for longer than 40 minutes, you can always schedule to launch the Zoom on your desktop so that you can hear the facilitator's live streaming instructions. While in the workshop, you will see different types of interactive questions appear on the slides. For multiple choice question, select the choice as response. For drawing type of question, you can draw anywhere with different pen color or size. For multimedia question, you might upload a file from your local desktop. For common type of question, you can leave your text comment at anywhere of the slides by marking a spot first, then enter your text. For text question, simply type in your answer. No matter what kind of question it is, once you finish responding, the answers will be synchronized to the facilitator at real time. And you can check out their simultaneous feedback by clicking the icon at the bottom right corner. In order to join a registered workshop, first you need to log into Classcipe. Go to Live Workshop page. If your registered workshop is under the schedule list, it means that it has not started yet. You will need to wait until the facilitator starts the session. If it is under the ongoing list, simply click Enter Workshop. You will be taken to the live workshop, where the button Join the Zoom meeting allows you to open the Zoom on your desktop, then interact with the facilitator by answering different types of questions. Find a PD content on your list. Simply click Workshop. On the scheduling page, you have the option to run paid or free workshops. You can also set the basics such as the pricing, discount detail.
Okay, we have 2 more minutes to start the workshop. So I will play a very important video, how to interact with your facilitators on the Classcipe platform for everyone to watch. Okay. So Safari, how to interact. Okay, here, how to interact with your facilitators on Classcipe.
When you enter a workshop, on the prompt window, make sure you click Join the Zoom meeting to launch the Zoom on your desktop so that you can hear the facilitator's live streaming instructions. While in the workshop, you will see different types of interactive questions appear on the slides. For multiple choice question, select the choice as response. For drawing type of question, you can draw anywhere with different pen color or size. For multimedia question, you might upload a file from your local desktop. For common type of question, you can leave your text comment at anywhere of the slides by marking the spot first, then enter your text. For text question, simply type in your answer. No matter what kind of question it is, once you finish responding, the answers will be synchronized to the facilitator. You can check out their simultaneous feedback by clicking the icon at the bottom right corner. In order to join a registered workshop, first you
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, actually, good evening from Auckland. Nice to meet you all. I see we have already 27 participants to this live workshop, and I expect the participants number will start growing, gradually growing. Yes. So thank you everyone to join the class. So I request everyone to mute yourself, and my co-hosts, my colleagues Saheli and Certain and Hira, please help to mute participants if they are not muted. Yeah, you can unmute yourself whenever you want to ask a question. So welcome to join the Classcipe PD collective. Our first session is kick-started by Professor Curtis Beavorford. He's from Canada, and he's located currently in Japan, Tamagawa University. Curtis, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Morning. Good afternoon, I guess now.
Yeah. Okay. So before we start the meeting, I'm going to quickly give everyone an introduction. So we are a New Zealand-based edtech company. We aim to create an online global educators community. In this community, you will be powered up by our edtech tools to create your teaching content much more efficiently, because you will receive accurate recommendation of teaching resources, matching your student differentiation, matching your curriculum and learning objective. You will also be able to create your PD content and become a PD facilitator yourself. You are also, in addition, you will be able to list your teaching content for sale after April, because that's when we are going to install our online payment function. Before that, if you can have a look on our library, we have already high quality free resources contributed by some excellent educators. And if you take something from the community, we hope that you can contribute something back as well. Try to make your teaching content in Classcipe and give us your feedback. Okay, and next I'm going to mention the very important thing. I'm going to introduce my colleague Saheli. Saheli is going to introduce us the requirements for you to get your certificates.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you, Inan. Hi, everyone, and welcome you again to the workshop. So just requesting your attention regarding the certificate issuance process. So we have two types of certificates for this event. First is the certificate of attendance. The certificate of attendance will be issued to them who are attending the live session uninterrupted till the end. Second, the certificate of participation. The workshop will end with a post-session activity given by the workshop facilitator. Once you complete the activity and upload your evidence, you will be eligible for the same. We will be sending you the platform navigation and submission details via email. The feedback form will be sent to the chat box. You need to fill up and submit in order to get the certificate. I hope it is clear. Thank you, and over to Inan.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. So now I will hand the meeting to Curtis. Hope everyone can enjoy this wonderful training delivered by Curtis.
Okay, and I'm just gonna ask Haley or Jensen to remind me how to turn on the presenter view. Woo, I forgot.
Huh?
Curtis,
Beijing
would
pamuk.
you like to share your
Mungkin
screen?
deh, beras gaisu.
Instruct you?
Beijing pamuk.
Yeah, Curtis, would you like to share your screen so
Yes,
I can
Curtis, you
show you
can
how
share
to do
your
that?
screen. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. No
I
problem.
thought I
Yeah.
had everything all organized, and I just realized. Okay, so this is my screen. So I
Okay.
just have,
So this is the presenter view, Curtis.
Yeah.
I think, Curtis, you are in the class. You joined the class by the student link.
Yeah.
Saheli, could you share Curtis the co-teach link in the chat?
Yes, I shared. Curtis, can you please check your mail once, please?
yeah, sorry, one sec. Sorry about this. That's not the greatest. So you know, co-teach link there. Yes.
There you go. Yes. So we have different links on the platform for students to log in and teachers to log in. Teachers, they can log in the Classcipe. If they are the PD facilitator or content creator, they will automatically enter the workshop as a teacher. However, for example, in this case, we invited Curtis to be the co-teach of this session. So he is able to use the co-teach link to co-teach with us. Thank you. Yes.
So Curtis, you can see my icon is there. So I'm there as a backup. So anytime you are stuck, I'm here in the same PPT. So please don't worry. Yeah, over
Okay.
to you, Curtis. Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm just gonna move my bar here. Sorry, the Zoom bar is always in the way. Okay, so today we're gonna spend the next hour and a half looking at assessment in general, and specifically we're going to focus in on three common approaches to assessment. They're not necessarily better or worse, they serve different purposes, and we're going to look at assessment as and for learning. And I'm going to, hopefully we're going to keep this kind of interactive, so there'll be a couple of times I'll send you guys off to breakout groups to discuss, and hopefully everybody's able to like interact with the slides so you can see some of the features of the platform itself. Okay, so just kind of what the learning intentions that I had outlined today was to discuss the role and nature of assessment in teaching and learning, appreciate the features of assessment of, for, and as learning, discuss the uses of assessment, some of the uses, and we're going to take a quick look at some strategy, or we're going to brainstorm some strategies that would fall into each one of these 3 approaches to assessment. In the second session that comes up in the not so distant future, we'll look at these things in a bit more depth. So today's kind of just an overview. Maybe would be helpful if you can just take a couple of seconds, and if you can put a dot on the map where you're actually from. And where you're, oh, thanks. We've got a couple of people who've entered India, Middle East. Oh, we're getting quite a few, and I'm gonna, let's see where you're at. Great. And I'm gonna move my Zoom bar again. Great. Anyone else want to grab that? Just, you can do it with the writing tool. Just put a little mark on the map and show us where you're at. Okay, so let's see.
You can click on the green arrow, and yes, there you go. You'll be able to see more clear.
Ah, yes. Okay. Oh, I see. Some people have annotated some people have used the Zoom annotation button, I think. Yeah. So but you can actually do it right on the slide if you click the right button. There should be like a little bar on the top. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Thanks those who added. Next thing, and this is a Zoom function. Annotate. I gotta use the eraser just a sec. Okay, and if you can do the same thing, actually this one's a choice slide. So we're just wondering a little bit about the group. Let's see what we've got. Primary teachers, middle school teachers, high school teachers, administrators, other. We're getting, we've got quite a few middle school primary teachers. Got kind of a good mix. Just a second. Okay, thank you very much for sharing that information. And for some reason, because I know what's happened. Sorry, I got to turn off the annotate button. There we go. Okay. And now, so we've got some others. Administrator. Okay, thanks, Ashika. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And there's a similar thing. Tell us a little bit about what type of school you're working in. An IB school, Cambridge school, state curriculum, other, private, public. We've got an one IB school. Two IB schools. Anybody else want to share what kind of school they're coming from?
Sorry, I'm interrupting you. Most of the people over here, they are writing on the chat. Instead of on the chat, if you can just click on the link that is shared and register yourself, sign in on Classcipe. Yes, using that link. Then you can answer on the slide which Curtis is showing.
Right. Okay. Oh, I didn't notice the chat. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at that. So if you click on the actual slide, that'd be swell. Okay, thanks. So we got quite a few IB people. Yeah, now we're getting more answers in there. Thank you. And let's take a look at what we've got. Oh, we got some more. Oh, we've got a lot of IB people. Okay, well, that's interesting. So maybe a little bit about me, first of all. So my name's Curtis Beavorford, as I was introduced at the beginning. I'm a Canadian who's been working internationally since 1997 is when I left Canada. And I've had a bunch of different roles. I was mostly international schools. I taught in international schools in Taiwan, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and I was head of an IB school in East Timor for a while. And I also worked for the IB for 7 years. I was in charge of the MYP for Asia Pacific. So it's nice to see a bunch of IB teachers here. That's kind of my background. And right now, I'm working at a Japanese university teaching a set of graduate courses that are connected to the IB educator certificates. I'm not sure if you're aware, it's kind of like, it's an award or a certificate issued by the IB to people who've completed a program of study that kind of focuses kind of much deeper than a workshop would go into the principles and practices of the IB. So that's kind of a little bit about my background. I just wanted to share with you a resource. So I'm not sure if you are aware of this platform, but it's a platform that I really like. It's called Wakelet. It's kind of like Pinterest, but it's secured. And it's a great way of sharing resources with classes, sharing resources with your classes. And I think you should be able to see it pop up. And if you can't, I'll paste the link just in case, because yesterday we had a little bit of trouble with this one. I'll paste the link into chat and you'll have access to that. Everyone, you'll have access to that after the workshop as well. So there's a link to the Wakelet collection. And on it, I've put in some of the stuff that I use with my classes, some of the readings and stuff that I use with my classes. If you want to go, if we want to take a closer look at some of the stuff we'll be talking about today. Great. Okay, and I have too much stuff on my screen. I can't see anything. There we go. Okay, first part of the presentation, we're going to delve into why do we assess? And I think this is kind of important. It should be kind of like the first question you ask yourself. What's the purpose of assessing? And to start off with, I wanted to focus on the difference between these two words, evaluation and assessment. I think they're in some languages don't have a word for assessment. They only have the word evaluation, and the two processes are quite different. And what I'd like to do first off is I'm gonna send you guys off to a breakout room just to have a little discussion about the differences between these terms. And if one person in the breakout room can actually add some thoughts that are coming out from the discussion onto the slide, that would be really swell. So I'll give you about maybe 5 or 6 minutes to do that. And I'm going to, there we go. I'm going to create random breakout groups. Random breakout groups. Can I do that? You sure? I'm looking here.
Saheli, can you please
Yes.
share Curtis the co-host?
Ah, yeah, that's why I can't. Yeah, if you can make me co-host, that would be swell. Okay, and where's my?
Yes,
there we go.
Curtis, you're the co-host. Yeah. You can do it.
Okay, so breakout rooms. There we go. Okay, and how many people are in the group?
Now we have 54, so I think 6 breakout room or 5 maybe.
Okay. There we go. I'll create 54. So how about I'm gonna create 10. Okay. And inside the group, please have a quick discussion about the possible differences and similarities between these terms. And if one person in the group can jot down some ideas onto the slide, then we'll when we come back, we'll share. Okay. So we'll give you about 5 minutes. There we go. And open all the rooms. There we go. And then Oh, good. Okay, so we got quite a few responses. I don't know if everybody's back yet. I'm just going to hit my responses here.
That was quick.
Good. Are we all back? I think we must be mostly all back, I think. So let's just have a little boy. Someone has an Looks like an Apple Pencil there, because there's quite a bit of writing on that slide. Let's see what we've got. Beneficial evaluation and assessment. And I heard inside the discussions in some of the rooms that there was a general thing that evaluation is kind of final and definitely kind of relates to like a summative assessment. Let's see here. Oopsie, sorry. I got to go back one. What else have we got here? Criterion related assessments ongoing. That's definitely kind of, I think it's something that I heard in different people's conversations. Marking different types of assessments, formative, yeah, definitely different types, formative, pure, summative. It can happen anytime. Understand what the student has understood. Yeah, it's beneficial for both initial stages. Oh, great. Oh, there's a lot of good stuff on these slides, and we won't be able to look at them all. This is interesting. Both need criteria. That's interesting. I'm not so sure that's always the case with evaluation. Sometimes I think evaluation doesn't necessarily imply transparency that you would get with criteria, but it could do for sure, right? Great.
We
Okay.
could write on the slide. So is it okay if we share here?
Sure.
Yeah. So we basically felt that evaluation is more of a summative kind of assessment, and assessment is more of formative because it's an ongoing process.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that's pretty common, especially we got a lot of IB teachers in the group, I think, today. And so hopefully that's what's happening, because that's kind of what's supposed to happen in IB teaching and learning.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, this here, hopefully this works. This should, if you don't see the webpage on the side, at the bottom, there'll be a little link and you can open it in another window. And I thought this was kind of interesting. This comes from ResearchGate, and basically, a bunch of researchers posed this question and asked for people's opinions. And I think what you'll see in those responses, right, if you have a quick scroll through them, a lot of the things that you guys were mentioning in the breakout groups definitely came through there. And I think we'll skip this one because people did it. This is an interesting thing I do. When I worked for the IB, I did a lot of work in different countries. And what's interesting is in some languages don't have two words for it. Like, for example, French and Spanish, they don't have the word assessment. They only have the word evaluation. Japanese only has the word evaluation. It doesn't have assessment either. And I think that in English, the word itself is derived from aceder, with a Latin or Greek word aceder, must be Latin actually, and that means to sit beside. So this idea of sitting beside somebody and giving feedback is kind of built into the word assessment, whereas evaluation, it's I think someone Googled it, I heard in the breakout room, and they said to make a judgment, right? So that making a judgment is probably I don't think it's as helpful to learning as actually sitting beside somebody and getting feedback. And the question was, does your mother tongue have two words for these ideas? And let's see, we've got some yeses, we've got some nos. But it's interesting because if your mother tongue doesn't have this, and what happens here, it happens here in Japan, is they have to qualify the type of evaluation, like ongoing evaluation or ongoing, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing when it all comes out in the wash. Okay, I just put this table here to kind of highlight some of the differences between the terms, and basically, again, what came out in your conversations, right? The timing, orientation, and the findings and uses of the information that you get from these two practices. So assessment theoretically tends to be more formative, right? And information that the student gets is kind of ongoing, and it's designed to improve learning, where evaluation is summative, final, and it's to kind of gauge the quality, right? And if you Google the definition, that's definitely part of the definition. The orientations of the focus of the measurement, right? Assessment tends to be process orientated, looking at how the process of learning is going and getting feedback on that. Whereas evaluation tends to be more product orientated. So the actual finished product is what kind of gets judged, right? And with an assessment, it's more kind of a metacognitive learning processes. That's where you're going to get the feedback. And finding the uses of, so assessment can be diagnostic, to identify areas for improvement. Evaluation tends to be more judgmental, arriving at an overall grade or a final score. And I guess the question I had on the slide was, this one here on the slide. So with your educational experience as a student, maybe not as a teacher, but when you were a student, which of the terms you experienced? Was it, did you come from a tradition of ongoing assessment, or did you come from more of a tradition of I know evaluation?
But there's this.
Oh. Positive feedback quality. Okay, so I see that some people have checked off some buttons here, right? That most people are saying, it looks like most people are saying they came from more of an evaluative tradition. I think that's true, especially maybe not if you're really young, but for older folks like me, it was totally evaluative. There was no assessment involved. Okay, just gonna quick to another one. And I just put up these two definitions here. And so assessment focuses on learning and teaching outcomes, provides information for improving learning and teaching. And later when we talk about assessment of, for, and as learning, I think that the differences between those three approaches is definitely what the information is used for. That's kind of how they've created these different terms for these approaches, right? Evaluation, like we mentioned before, focuses on grades and may reflect classroom components other than course content and mastery level. So these two definitions kind of sum it up pretty well, I think, of the differences. Next thing I wanted to have people consider, and we'll try to break out again. If you can draw on you should be able to draw on this side. So another big thing that you have to wrap your head around when coming to a better understanding of assessment is just why we assess in general. What are the purposes of assessment? And this is a drawing slide. And I just thought I'd give you a couple of minutes to talk, maybe about 5 minutes or so, to talk in your group, to talk about the actual why. Why do we assess? What are the purposes of assessment? It's a fairly easy conversation, but one that's worth having every once in a while. So I'm going to open up some breakout rooms again. Here we go. I'm going to recreate them so you get to talk with different people, right? And there we go. I'm going to open up the rooms, give you about 5 minutes, and if somebody that can manipulate the slide can jot down on the slide some of the ideas that came out of your discussion, that would be swell.
Hello everyone. Are we in a breakout room?
Hello. Yes.
We are in breakout room.
May I know your name, please, ma'am?
Zainab.
Zainab,
Because
yeah, I'm just
accidentally
assigning you. Yeah, I'm just
I
assigning you again to a
accidentally,
breakout room.
got disconnected. That's why.
No problem. I'm just assigning you to a breakout room. You will be
Okay.
there. Yeah,
Fine. Thank you.
no problem.
Back.
Okay.
আপনার কাজ করতে থাকেন আমি
sorry, I was muted. I was talking to myself. I'm sorry about that. Oops. So I just wanted to highlight this. This is some material that comes out of the PYP. For any of you in the IB world, you'll know that the PYP went through quite a revision and released a new set of documents in 2018. And I think what some of the comments that they made about assessment, I think, are applicable to education at all levels, and especially the different IB programs. And then they came up with this graphic about the how, the why, and the what of assessment. And we're just going to talk a little bit about this. They also came up with, in their new version, they talk about 4 dimensions of assessment. So it's monitoring, documenting, measuring, and the last one's reporting. And so that's kind of talking about the how of assessment. Monitoring is, if you're not familiar with this term, because it's not rocket science, but basically that's kind of emphasizing the need for ongoing feedback and ongoing kind of monitoring of the learning process. And in their diagram of the dimensions of assessment, in the PYP at any rate, the monitoring section is the largest part of the diagram. Documenting next, and measuring and reporting are slightly smaller, kind of sort of emphasizing their importance in the process. Why we assess. So basically the students, through ongoing assessment, we're trying to get students to become kind of self-adjusting, self-regulating, right? And so that they take a much more kind of responsible role, and they become responsible for their actual achievement if we're doing things the way we're supposed to. Teachers' information from assessment, theoretically, it should help us adjust our instruction. So if we take the data we get from assessment, we should be able to modify our actual teaching strategies. And if you wait till the end, right, it's a little hard to modify your teaching strategies if you're only getting information at the very end of the process, right? You can't kind of self-adjust on the fly.
From assessment and with teacher.
And the information from assessment is really kind of only useful if it arrives during the learning process, right? If you get it after, it's much more like an autopsy. I don't think autopsies are a particularly great way at stopping heart attacks, for example, right? And the question I had on this slide is when did you as a learner receive information to support your learning? And it looks like we're getting kind of, just to show the responses, during, before, after. Oh, I spelled after wrong on the slide. Oops, right? And people, it looks like there's kind of like, quite a few people are saying before, which is great. And not too many people are saying never, which is a very good thing. I'm just going to switch to the next slide. Next part of it is the what, right? So what are we trying to assess? And I think this is a bit tricky. There's 3 kind of components on this particular slide. They're talking about assessing knowledge, assessing skills. And if you're in an IB world, hopefully we're assessing conceptual understanding. Most of my experience with the IB was with the MYP. I did a lot of school visits and worked with an awful lot of teachers over the years. And I've always found it kind of interesting that a lot of times IB teachers will fill out the unit planner and they've got all this, the first part of the planner, which kind of defines the scope of the inquiry, looks all great and stuff. But when you look at the assessments they use and some of the learning engagements that they're going to be using during the teaching process, quite often there's very little that actually comes back to conceptual understanding, even though that's supposed to be the point of it. And the question at the bottom of this slide is, which of these do you think is the most difficult to assess? And just looking at the responses we've got here, conceptual understandings is showing up quite often. And I think that's very true, that the conceptual understandings are kind of hard to assess, because to actually get information about someone's conceptual understanding, you need a pretty sophisticated assessment task, right? A little hard to pick up on something like the multiple choice test. Other people have put skills. I think skills can be kind of tricky as well. And I think, again, referring to the IB world, one of the things that are common to all three programs are these approaches to learning skills, which we talked about quite a lot. They're kind of like the IB's version of the 21st century learning skills. And I think they're quite, teachers find them hard to assess, because to assess them well, you need to have a really specific expectation for what that skill looks like in that particular stage, right? And one of the kind of things that hasn't worked all that well with the approaches learning skills in the IB is the IB gives you the name of the skill, but it doesn't give you the expectation for what that skill looks like when practiced at different grade levels, right? So giving meaningful feedback, for example, if it doesn't say student will do blah, 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 how do you actually gather information to see whether or not you've successfully taught that skill? I think that's probably a pretty common feature. And the other one, I think we've got some people, nobody said content. Content, I think, or knowledge. Knowledge is probably the easiest way to do it, or easiest thing to assess for, because it can be done in some pretty traditional manner, using some pretty traditional assessment tools, which everybody's pretty familiar with. Okay, so I guess that first part of the presentation, I was hoping that we kind of looked at these ideas of evaluation versus assessment and some of the purposes that we assess for. And now we're going to take a closer look at assessment of, for, and as learning. And I'm going to put you back again to just kind of, before we actually start, see if you guys can have a discussion as to what you think is the differences, or what these terms, assessment as, for, and of learning, what the approaches to assessment that they reflect, what the kind of key idea about them is. So I'm going to put you back into breakout rooms again, just to have a quick discussion about it, and then we'll look at the stuff that I pulled from some literature after you come back. Okay, BDDD breakout rooms. Here we go. Recreate so that everybody gets a chance to talk, and it looks like, yep, okay, there we go. I'm going to open the rooms, and about 5 minutes or so for that. It's like we're coming back. Great. Okay. I think everybody's back, or almost everybody's back. Room 3 isn't back yet, but they should be in a second or two. And it looks like some people have got the hang of the slides, which is good. And we'll just take a kind of a quick look at some of the responses we got. Assessment as learning, type of formative assessment used by the teacher. We got self-assessment, assessment. Let's see what else we got here. Assessment as learning, pre-assessment, KWO charts, check students' previous knowledge in order to guide our teaching, formative assessment in this one, summative assessment, the final product. Okay. Let's just pick another one here at random. Let's see. Not that they're not all good, it's just let's find one that's kind of filled out more than the others. Okay. Students reflect on their progress, evidence of learning, and oh, this one's too small, I can't read it. Okay, so I'm gonna just close this one down for a sec. I think that by the sounds of the conversations in the group, assessment of learning is kind of the most traditional one, and I think most people had that kind of sorted out. That these two, the distinction is a little closer, and I think it depends on the actual literature that you're looking at. So let's take a little closer look here. Uh-oh, just a sec. Somebody's annotating on my slide. I'm just gonna get my eraser. Sorry, not that it's not good, but it's not where it's supposed to be. Here we go. Thank you. Thanks, and I'll close that. So assessment of learning, like I mentioned before, it's the kind of most traditional approach. Usually happens near the end, right? And it's kind of the feedback that we get or we give, not so terribly helpful, I don't think, in that it happens after the learning process is kind of over. And so I don't think, like, I personally know, even with the students I'm teaching now at the undergraduate and graduate level, if you just leave comments on a paper when you hand it back, they may or they may not do anything with that information, because usually by the time they're finished with the assessment, they're done with it and they don't really want to go back to the session. This can be fixed though, if you allow resubmission, right? So if resubmission is part of your assessment practices, then this doesn't have to be so final. But student receives descriptive comments. They receive them after completing the work. This type of assessment requires defensible reference points for making judgments. So in the DP and the MYP, the IB gives specific criteria that we have to use to assess work, and that's hopefully that's shared with students before they start the work. So they should get quite a lot of information before they start about what the actual expectations are inside the work. But in the PYP, they don't have prescribed assessment criteria. The teachers have to come up with it themselves, right? Usually, hopefully, based on the curriculum. So that, and if it's not consistent, I think students don't necessarily internalize criteria created in that situation because it kind of changes too much. Usually product based. So assessment of learning is kind of the most traditional one, the one that we're most familiar with. I'm just going to switch to the next one. Assessment for learning. Basically, assessment for learning gives information provided. The information that it's providing is helping teachers to improve instruction. It results in immediate feedback to the students, and it helps teachers structure learning environments. So in this approach to assessment, the goal is to make students thinking visible and understanding. And if you've done any reading John Hattie's work. He talks a lot about making thinking visible so that we can actually see the process of learning, right? And so this assessment for learning is definitely happening like as the learning process is taking place. Assessment data is used to find out what students know and can do and what misconceptions they may be having or might be forming. In my teaching now, all my teaching load is online, and most of it's I use asynchronous, or the content that for the courses that we deliver is asynchronous, and I use a similar system to this. And it's really interesting to watch, because when you have prompts on slides and students can actually enter them into a system like this, it's really easy to see misconceptions. And I find that's really helpful because you can catch a misconception before it becomes ingrained, which I think is a really useful thing. The question on this slide was, how would you describe the teacher's role in this approach to assessment? And we're getting some responses here. Teachers can help students reflect on their learning, help to plan further lessons, to remediate, develop conceptual understanding. Definitely. So the teacher's role in this is much more kind of a facilitator and a resource rather than just kind of a judger, right? Like kind of a judge. The next one we're going to look at, and this is probably, this comes out of the work of a woman named Lorna Earle. I think she's the one that actually coined this term. So assessment as learning, students need to understand their learning processes based on information they gather to plan and set their own learning goals. So when we talk about assessment as learning, we're really talking about the student being much more in charge of the process and to kind of emphasize the metacognitive aspect of learning. And to do this, teachers have to design learning environments which actively involve the students, right? So the assessment tasks that you put out there are actually not so much directed at the final product, but more the process of getting to the final product. Key to assessment as learning is the understanding that learning is an active, constructive process. Students need to be critical assessors and personally monitor their learning processes, and information from assessment as learning allows students to make self-adjustments to their processes. So they're getting feedback as they're actually working through the assessment tasks that you're giving them. And hopefully with that feedback, they're actually adjusting their processes to improve their performances. I think this is a lot easier to do now with things like collaborative documents. If you get students to hand in work on like Google Docs or live Word docs, you can actually jump in there and give feedback while they're actually typing. It's a bit tricky because if they leave it to the night before, there's nothing you can really do, right? But if they're working on it over time and you jump in and leave comments and have discussions with the students in these documents, it's a pretty powerful tool, something that was a lot harder to do in the past. Question at this one, again, is how would you describe the teacher's role in assessment as learning? Allowing students, I'm just taking some of the responses we've got back here, allowing students time for reflection, peer assessment, and self-reflection through units and tasks. This is a really, thank you for adding that. I think this idea of reflection, this is another really common feature of IB teaching and learning, this idea of reflection. A question to people would be, we often expect students to reflect, but do we actually teach them how to reflect? Because I notice in the classes that I teach, if you just ask students to reflect, sometimes they'll do things like, I think this went well and I like this and blah, 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 blah. But I don't think that we often give, or not everybody gives a framework for reflection. And I discovered that if you have a relatively simple assessment criteria for what constitutes a good reflection, the quality of the reflection you get back from the students is hugely better than if you just ask them to reflect. Another common thing with reflection is to get students to respond to prompts. So quite often you'll see various reflection sheets where there's a question, question, question. And I think that the problem with that, what I've noticed over the years, is that students will dutifully respond to the questions, but I don't think that they internalize reflection as a process, because they see it as more responding to a set of questions, and they do that at the end or whatever, and they just kind of answer the questions. But I don't think they really build on their reflective processes as much when it's so prompted. Teachers a mediator, ladder of feedback. That's a great tool for reflection. It's definitely a wonderful one. Allowing students time for reflection. This idea of peer assessment is super important too, because with peer assessment is socially kind of a difficult process, because you actually have to, you kind of have to work with kids so that they give feedback in a way that's not damaging, right? But once you do that, and once they have experience with the language that they need to actually give feedback to peers in a constructive manner, it's a pretty powerful tool. And so is self-assessment. And something that's easy to do if the expectations for the assessment task are very clear and outlined, so they can use that information. It gives them a structure to reflect on the work itself, and to give feedback that is meaningful to their peers. Teach a guide to process feedback by concrete actions. Okay, thank you. Okay, so those are the three kind of approaches. Assessment of, very traditional, usually happens at the end. Assessment for learning, meaning we're using the assessment task itself to reshape instruction, right, to remediate where it's needed. And assessment as learning is much more kind of a student-centered approach to it. So the assessment that you're actually giving them is the vehicle through which the learning is going to happen. So it's much different than a kind of traditional test where you find out what they retained. This is assessment as learning, should give students the information they need to actually adjust their learning processes. So it's kind of the most complex approach to assessment that's on the books right now. Okay, just going to look a little bit about some of the similarities and differences between assessment of, for, and as learning. And I like this. I quite like this diagram. This again comes from a woman named Lorna Earle. And this diagram of the kind of the pyramid of learning, I think sums it up quite well. In traditional assessment, this kind of is like the amount of time, I guess, that's spent on assessment. Here, the bulk of the importance, right, of it was assessment of learning, right? At the end, we do a test to find out what they retained. But in this reconfigured assessment pyramid down here, you can see that the of is the smallest part. It might be at the top still, but it's not where most of our efforts are put in, right? Most of our efforts should be put into assessment as learning so that it directly benefits the students themselves. And in the Wakelet collection that I gave you, there's actually there's a link from the ASCD to one of the kind of chapters of Lorna Earle's book, if you haven't read it before. But she's the one that kind of describes this process. I think she's kind of the go-to source for wrapping your head around assessment as learning. Okay, I'm going to send you back out to groups again, and if you can draw on the slide, great. If you're having trouble, maybe one of the people in your group will be able to do this. And I want you to consider similarities and differences between these approaches. You might want to consider the what, why, the how, and the when of it, right? Because I think that those, what we're actually trying to assess, why we're doing it, and how we do it, and when we do it are kind of, it might be a good way to look at these three approaches with regards to similarities and differences. So I'll send people back, give you 5 minutes or maybe a little bit more. I'll check it in the groups and see what's happening. And breakout rooms, I'm going to recreate them again. Recreate. And there we go.
I accidentally closed everything.
Oh, I'm just going to close the rooms down and share the screen. It looks like some people were able to, were able to use the tool really easily, and some people had some troubles by the looks of it. Let's show a response and see what we got back from this group here. And let's see if we're back. I think most people are back now. Okay, so it looks like this group was able to, we had a pretty good handle on the tool. And it looks like they managed to get quite a bit of information on their slide. And just let me just check one sec. Let's see. Rooms. Did we? Yeah, everybody's back now. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so assessment as learning. And so the what, peer and self-assessment, self-motivation, why for self-motivation, self-improvement, how, goal setting, reflection. Great. In the center here, we've got drives and informs actions. That's a great thing to put in the center. And different types of assessments towards learning. I think when you're thinking about these three different approaches, I think people tend to think that it's kind of like with the inquiry spectrum, right? In inquiry, you have like at the far end, you have open inquiry, and at the bottom, the other end, you have like structured inquiry. People tend to think that one is better than the other, but I don't think that's necessarily the case, right? All three of these approaches have different functions, and all three of them can be used for different purposes. So it's not that they're not really mutually exclusive, right? They just kind of have different purposes, and can be used in different contexts. We've got here how effective teaching strategies are, how well students can use and implement their skills at the center. That's a great thing to put at the center of that. Okay, it sounds like it sounds like there were some pretty good discussions. I'm going to just move on to the next screen here. And a couple of terms that have come up quite often, and I've noticed that this is a kind of a pet peeve of mine. In the IB world, for a long time now, we've been using these well, it's not just the IB world, the world of assessment. They use the term formative and summative assessment. Formative assessment tends to happen during the learning process, and summative assessment, of course, happens usually after the process. But I think these two processes don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I've heard a lot when I visit schools. I still do quite a few school visits, and I'll talk to teachers, and they're saying our school says we should have three formative assessments and one summative assessment. And I've never really known where this comes from. This idea of putting a number on this. And I think it might be like some school leaders want it to happen, so they've assigned a number to make sure it happens a little bit. Summative assessment tends to happen at the end, like we mentioned before. It's kind of akin to evaluation. It determines if the instruction was successful or not at the end, and it may provide information to the learner that will be useful in the future, but the information is provided after the learning is finished. So summative assessment tends to be kind of, I guess, more formal, more traditional. Definitions of formative and summative nature, I just put some definitions up here. I realize we're a little bit behind, so different people have tried to quantify these things differently. One of the guys, Dylan Williams, he along it's quite old now, but he was one of the researchers that really brought out the he was talking about assessment as learning, like that. His writing mostly deals with that, and it talks about the power of feedback, right? And that's kind of his specialty. And he's a big proponent, well, as most people should be, that this feedback should come from different sources, including the learner themselves, and that it happens before it's over, so that people can actually make use of the information. I'm just going to skip this one quick because we're running out of time here. But I wanted to put this point down that I think that the formative and summative assessment shouldn't be considered mutually exclusive processes. And one thing that I've found that's really helpful is that when we say summative assessment, we're usually talking about the big assessment in the unit, right? But through some subjects, it works easier than others, but that summative assessment can be used formatively, right? A good example is any writing process in English, right? Drafting, right? So it's not that you're working on separate tasks, it's all one big task, but each draft, right, is a chance for students to get information back so they can fix the draft. So that's pretty common in language teaching. But it doesn't only have to be language teaching. We can draft all sorts of things, right? An experiment in some respects could be repeated. The other thing that I think is really important is this idea of resubmission of work. So if your purpose is to find out if the student can actually do that performance or has gained this knowledge, allowing resubmission of a piece of work can be a little bit of a headache because it's logistically kind of tricky sometimes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But this idea that the summative assessment isn't actually finished until you actually have to harvest the grade to put in your mark book. So all the way up to that day when you finally put the grade in your mark book, it doesn't have to be over yet, right? Especially if the purpose of the assessment is to find out whether the kid can do it or not. Sometimes if we put kind of artificial timelines and deadlines in place, right, we're not necessarily making the best use of the assessment that we designed, right? And this idea of using the summative assessment formatively, right, I think is kind of a really important kind of aspect of assessment, in my humble opinion. And these two terms, formative and summative, they also don't translate that well into some languages, right? And so I think in the latest materials from the IB, as definitely the PYP, they kind of not stopped using these words, but rather than use formative and summative, the term that's replacing it is ongoing assessment. And I think that term ongoing is kind of important because it's a lot broader than some of our conceptions of formative and summative assessment. I'm just going to skip. We're going to skip this too because we're going to move on to this one here, and I just want you to give a little bit of discussion and thoughts or share some tools that would fall under these different approaches, like what types of assessment tasks or tools or strategies would fall into these kind of three different categories, kind of best fit for purpose kind of thing, about like actual assessment tasks that lend themselves to these three different approaches to assessment. And I'm going to stick people back in groups again, and I'll just recreate them. Zoop. And if you have trouble writing on the slide, you can put it in chat or wherever you need to. But I think one thing I noticed is you should be able to share your screen. And this is going to take you to a Jamboard, and I'll just paste the link to the Jamboard in chat in case people can't access it off this slide. So I'll open the rooms and I'll post a link to the Jamboard, right? And there's several Jamboards on the screen. And if you just pick the one that corresponds to your breakout group number, that would be great. Okay, so just a sec. Gotta hit recreate. Beep. Open the rooms. There you go. And I'll paste a link to the Jamboard in chat in case anybody's having trouble getting at it. Here we go. Chat. Here's a link to the Jamboard for those of you. No. To everyone. Pop. Great. I popped in and out some of the rooms and there was some great discussions happening there. Let's see what we got. I think a lot of people seem to end up on the first page. There were other downwards, but that's not, there's an awful lot of suggestions here. Thank you very much for adding them here. Formative assessments. Yeah, and again, just get curiosity, why about the S on that, formative assessment. So again, that kind of suggests that there's a requirement of a certain number or something, but that's not necessarily the case. But definitely, formative assessment belongs probably in the assessment for an assessment as. I was visiting a room and they had VTR and I was like, what's VTR? Visible thinking routines. Somebody asked where they come from. And if you look, actually, if you go to Project Zero, just a sec, I'll just show this on my screen. I can't get my thingy. Project Zero, I just put project, I didn't put zero.
Yeah, somebody's already put the link in the chat.
Yeah, there's quite a few in there. And the other place, the other place is called the National School Reform. If you type in the word protocol, think, pair, share. This word protocol is kind of, I think, reading rockets. Where is it? It's a National Education Reform something, and they have all these different protocols for various thinking routines and discussion strategies. That it's pretty useful information. Oops, back to here. Let's see. We got learning outcomes, setting goals. Definitely, the setting goals definitely fits underneath here, because it's this idea that if the students taking more responsibility for their achievement, they should be actually setting goals, and there should be some feedback on whether the goals have been followed or not. Oh, thanks for sharing this too. Tag. This is a great little strategy. Tell something you like, ask a question, give suggestion. So if you're going to be using students as resources for learning, we have to actually teach them how to be like good resources to give good feedback, meaningful feedback to their peers. And that little tag thing is really useful, a useful tip, because it gives a structure to providing this kind of feedback. I'm just going to flip to another one here. Role play assessment for learning videos, peer assessment, group projects. Group projects are especially useful in this because if you're actually, and hopefully if you're an IB teacher, you are a subscriber to a constructivist approach to teaching and learning. Constructivist teaching and learning requires that students have the opportunity to negotiate understanding with their peers. Group projects are great at doing that because it provides a context for discussion, right? Which if it's all solo work, it's a little bit tricky to do that. Just take here's another one. Assessment of learning. We got grasps up there. So yeah, grasps comes from Wiggins and McTive's work. And sometimes I think it's a really useful, the grasp analysis of assessment task is meant to help kind of establish some authenticity to the task. And it's a great thing to give to students after you've done the analysis, but it's also really great for teachers for them to actually kind of check, does the assessment task I designed have some authenticity to it, and does it connect to the learner's actual real world? Open-ended questions, exit tickets. Yeah, assessment exit tickets are really good for this because theoretically at the end of a session or whatever, the exit ticket gives you, the teacher, information to modify that either in the future or modify it as you're on the fly as you're going. Okay, great. Thanks for putting down these. Oh yeah, some really good stuff. So this board will be open for you to take a look at at the end as well. And I'm just going to switch back here. I'm conscious of the time. There's something blocking me. There we go. Okay, so this is the first session, and there's going to be another session in the future. And what we've been asked to do, and this is something that the Classcipe PD people want us to be doing in the future, is to have a follow-up session after. And if you decide to join the follow-up session, basically what we'd like you to do is create an infographic visualizing the differences between these three approaches. And on that infographic or that the visual